password anymore.
We can just whisper it in each other's ears.
Doesn't sound creepy at all. Hey, how you going? Are there controls for like just backlights or anything like that, or is it just on?
No, it's one, I think.
Okay.
Unless someone wants to spark up their smartphone.
I don't know. I think that's probably fine.
Is it hard to read with the lights on or not?
No, it might be fine with the lights on. Yeah. Who wants what? Show of hands. On or off?
Can you read it on the phone?
Yeah, off is probably easy.
Off. Okay. You can read it on phone. Alright, well, let's get started. So, we thought that we'd just share some of our experiences with a cross-platform mobile app that we built recently. So, Cruzy is our internal name for it. Really, just Matt and I called it Cruzy. I don't know if anyone else does, but the actual development of it wasn't particularly cruisy, but it was enjoyable. But so the official name is Cruise Guide for Marlborough. And I can't get the. Interesting. Sorry, on that one maybe. Maybe. No, there we go. Cool. So the aim of the app was to try and sort of get a bit more information for the Marlborough District Council to make decisions around marine resource consents. That's kind of the overarching goal. They have a whole bunch of data sets of information about the area. Most of them are available on maps, but usually only on a single map, one for moorings or one for piers and wharves and things like that. And this is sort of trying to combine all of that data together and bring it together in a useful way. Yeah, I think a lot of boaties probably venture out into the sounds and have a look around and they don't necessarily know where the good places to go are. Places to find shelter in particular types of weather and things like that. So that's trying to bring some of that information to them. So the Marlborough District Council originally pitched this idea as a mobile-friendly website, but after kind of figuring out what the requirements were, George sort of pushed for more of a mobile app approach, basically from the perspective of trying to get offline data, given that the area, the lack of reception in the areas that the app would be useful in, you want to be able to store that information offline. For the dev team, I think it was actually really great to get experience on a proper agile process. In general, the agile projects that we've been on in the past have been kind of more of a waterfall with some sprints thrown in. Someone had a big idea up front and planned it all out, and then you just kind of chunk it up into blocks and work through it. But that's certainly not what the experience was this time. There was an overview, a vision up front, but it certainly changed massively throughout the project. So the client was really involved and able to make decisions about the next set of features, even in the planning session just before the next sprint. As long as those ideas were well fleshed out and understood, then we could get straight on with them. So yeah, and the resulting product was very different from what they originally thought up. Right. As we say, this is where it all goes wrong. So there is actually an Android app that people could potentially download and have a play with. I don't know if anyone has yet. you probably want to connect to the Wi-Fi first, because it's a fairly chunky.
You don't need the Wi-Fi password. I'll download it.
Did everyone get the Wi-Fi password earlier? We can probably.
Totally turned lights for a second. I don't know how to spell inevitable betrayal.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
All good? Anyone need the Wi-Fi password?
Okay.
Cool.
Alright. Oops. This one. Cool, so it's built in EmberJS and Phonegap. So we're using Ember Cli. And so this is the app actually just running in the browser using Ember Cli to serve it up, which is how we did the majority of our development. And it just moved into the simulator or actually on device for any specific testing. So I guess the main features of the app, so you can see, so you normally come into the app from this sort of view. So the greyed out sort of regions here are the geometries of bays that the Melbourne District Council have information about. So we're pulling them in from a Esri ArcGIS endpoints and just augmenting them with a bit of extra information. So you can click on them to automatically pan to a certain area, or it's a bit easier to demonstrate if you're a bit closer, but if you get one of them in the centre of the viewport, it automatically selects it. Like that. So you can also search for a bay, and it automatically populates the results as you type, and takes you directly to the bay. You can see here there's some data about the facilities in the area, so water skiing facilities plus camping, picnic table and that sort of thing. And if you look at the bay information itself, you can see some images that actually get uploaded through there's a CMS in the back end that the Melbourne District Council admin staff can add information about bays. So that kind of augments the geometry data that we have from their Esri API. Yeah, so descriptions, bit of information about specific features, and you can also add feedback about that bay. So that kind of ties back into. So this kind of ties back into them trying to get a bit more information about bays. So if people see that there's something that's not particularly correct about any of the features here, they can feedback about that. One of the really cool features here is the tide information. So this is all relative to this bay itself. So Land Information New Zealand, they provide data about the tides at sort of primary ports, and then it's kind of left up to you to infer what the tide might be based on the bay or the relative location of the bay to the primary port. So we've kind of taken a bit of the hard work out of that, and you can link up specific bays to primary ports and secondary ports in the area to get tidal information.
Calculates the offset.
Yeah. So actually I'll just drop back to there for a wee second. So as you can see here, the tides are based on Okiwa Bay, which is the nearest primary or secondary port. So yeah, if you want to see the title information for that area for any other date, you can go to this area, and it looks much nicer in the mobile app. Sorry, this is in the simulator itself. So if we just jump back into here, yeah, so you can select dates, so you can have a look, you know, a couple of days ahead, see what the tides are for that area at the time. So one of the things that can be a little bit tricky with these cross-platform apps is kind of handling swipe interactions and that sort of thing. Ember initially had a few issues with that, but we managed to sort of mitigate some of it. So you can supposedly swipe some of these things away. If you're going the wrong way, that's a problem. Yeah, and you can swipe up from the bottom on these and swipe back down to close them away. Yeah, so
Pop-ups, yeah, all sorts of data layers.
so there's different base maps that you can choose for the map. So there's a satellite one. Now this is rendered from a online tile server only. So if you're offline, you won't be able to see the satellite images. It's just a space consideration on the device, really. You can't download everything in the world onto the device for offline use. So yeah, there's the nautical charts.
That come bundled in
Yes.
the apps, they work offline.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a downloadable version of the topographical maps as well.
Yeah, that's right. So you can actually, if you click the, sorry, this one here, you can actually download it and store it offline. Cool. So
So what's the server for the topo maps?
we're using our own CDN.
Rolled our own
Right.
so
Did you look at the lens one? Or was it-
Yeah, so the Lens one, they just have quite low restrictions on usage. So if the app ever got popular, we'd be kind of running into problems.
Jump on the top of that there, Mark.
Yep.
On top of that one, go and have a look. And so, can you zoom out?
Yeah.
But if
it's
you go to the
fun in
lens,
there.
they actually provide either the top at 50 or the top at 250.
Yeah.
So we made our own hybrid tile server where at certain zoom levels it swaps out between the different top at
Right.
50s and top at 250s. So as you zoom in,
Yep.
you'll see, yeah, you'll see it swap there to a much more detailed map. So yeah, just going straight off the lens ones, they're a bit, not as nice experience.
Yeah,
So
fair
build
enough.
our own. And then we also build our own on-device tile servers as well. Sorry.
Yep. No, that's right. We'll get to that.
Spoilers!
Spoilers. Cool. So these are all the different kind of data sets that we're pulling from the Marlborough District Council. So navigation warnings and moorings and marine farms, things like that. So you can toggle them on and off here. Plus the app remembers what your settings were in here, which is obvious but a handy feature. Cool. One of the things I wanted to show was, that's right, private lines. So one of the problems that we kind of struck was some pretty large data sets in different places. So I'm lost right now. Sorry.
This is the reason we have a map, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Or the two.
What?
Or the 33, that were.
That one?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Right, yeah, there we go. So, as you can see in this cluster on the map here, we've got 164 private moorings, and as you zoom in further, there's still pretty big cluster counts in this really small area just right here. One of the requirements from the client was that they wanted to be able to see the exact location of those moorings. So it was too noisy to just have them on, unclustered as soon as you got to the base zoom level. So we decided to, if people are interested in it, they can click on one of these things which unclusters it, and then you can spiderfy them as well if you want to look at the individual mooring numbers, things like that. So one of the challenges of this was trying to figure out how to display some of this data.
So were the libraries and that stuff where you're writing or was you writing?
The clustering and spiderfying, there are libraries, so some plugins for Leaflet. So the map's all done in Leaflet.js. But we did have to write some custom stuff for unclustering and stuff like that on Click, which is kind of a bit of a hack around the library, but it works.
What library is used for the offline storage?
We had to roll our own for the majority of it. For the file storage, there's a PhoneGap plugin
Right.
that we're using to write to the file storage on the device. We were concerned that local storage wouldn't be enough for the data requirements.
So you're using something else for the local storage?
So we do use local storage a little bit for some of the things that we know are small data sets, but for the overall map data and things like that, we're using file storage. We were concerned we'd breach that sort of 4 or 5 meg limit that local storage has.
Yeah. Other than that, we've got some general information. You can find out about Marlborough Sounds and emergency information, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so that's they're all pages from the CMS, so just rendered into the mobile app, and they're all stored offline as well. So yeah, there's some challenges obviously with offline storage. If the data changes while you're offline and you come back, and what do you delete and all that sort of stuff. So
how do you refresh? Is it a main connection, or is it?
so every time the app boots again, it does a call to the for all the data on the map and the pages in the menu and all that sort of thing. But it only does it after a certain updated apps. So anything that's changed since the last time it called. Yeah. So we're recording, when it checked for the data last time, and yeah. And so we've got to remove. So the server side doesn't ever kind of actually delete anything as such. It just marks things as deleted so that you can go and find out which things were deleted and delete them off the device as well. Yep. Cool. Yeah. All right. That's pretty much most of the features, unless George has any other. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so this is the general architecture of the app and the back end for it. So Marlborough District Council has a whole lot of different Esri data sets that we're pulling from an API. We used Silverstripe for the CMS because that was the requirement was that there was a CMS. We've just recently done a government project that required Silverstripe and written a Esri importer, so we wanted to kind of just reuse some of that stuff. We ended up having to kind of extract quite a bit of it anyway. And Ember by default uses JSON API as its language for talking over APIs. So we had to write a custom API, JSON API adapter for Silverstripe, which Matt knocked off in no time, as he does. And then of course we have an Ember app with the leaflet map all wrapped in Cordova or PhoneGap. Yeah, so with the Ember app itself, So the core kind of structures of Ember are routes and components. So Ember is described as a URL-driven framework, and that's by the people that write it themselves, the maintainers. So Yeah, the idea is that the URL path actually defines the structure of the page. Because this is basically just one page with bits that kind of slide in and out, we weren't really using that kind of the routable nature of Ember to its strengths, but we certainly made heavy use of components. So components are, I mean, it's probably a lot of people here may have been to the Angular talks recently, so I guess the analogous item there is a directive. So it's basically a self-contained piece of markup and logic. So one of the core things that they propose with components in Ember is that basically you just pass data down to the component and actions back up. So that means that you give data to a component, it kind of knows what to do with it, but it doesn't modify it in any way. It listens to it, it acts on what the data is trying to tell it, and then it responds back out to the parent closure, which is either a route or another component if it's nested components or something like that, and that knows how to respond to that action. So the idea is that you should try to mitigate any possible side effects on changes to the data. A framework like this where everything's listening to everything else, all the models know what's going on with other things. You know, if you change something down low that something else is not expecting, then you can cause all sorts of interesting problems. So a lot of people think that components they were sort of designed for reuse, to be able to use them in multiple places in the app, and they are great for that because they define a constant interface, and you know exactly what it is that component responds with when actions occur. But it's more about isolation. It's making sure that it's one little piece that's testable, and there's nothing else that there's no sort of side effects and issues with the data. Alright, so offline storage was one of the key components with this app. So initially we looked into a library called Ember Sync. As Matt will kind of expand on a bit later, the time that we were working on this project, Ember was in a pretty extreme state of flux, transitioning between version 1 and version 2, and so a lot of the libraries just were not up to speed with the version of Ember that we were using, so it was quite hard to find things that were compatible, and we invested a bit of time into trying to bring Ember Sync up to speed, but it basically turned out that it was non-performant even once we got it working. So there was a little bit of a time sink that was a bit sad. So we ended up creating a custom store, which I think the time that we invested into Ember Sync told us a lot about what it was that we actually needed, and once we decided to go our own way, we sort of mapped it out and built that pretty quickly. So basically, if you query data from the internal store inside Ember, it initially grabs it from the file system and responds immediately with that, because it's a pretty fast lookup. You're not doing it over the network or anything like that, and that triggers a background call to the API, and when that returns, it returns with anything that's changed since the last fetch, which we talked about before, and that updates the store and also persists any of those changes back into the file system again, so you've got it for later offline use. And one of the things that Ember Data is really good at is if you add things to the store after you've made an initial query, it just updates that on the page as well. So you get the initial fetch of data, shows it on the page, and then once the rest of it comes back in, it just pops into life on the page as well. There's no kind of manually having to handle any of that stuff. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, so yeah, the server side never deletes the records. We just remove them from the offline store if they have a deleted flag on them. Cool. Yeah, one caveat there, I guess, is that we are still only retrieving data at this point. If we, in the future have to kind of write models back to the server and that sort of thing, you obviously get into a lot of issues with who wrote what last and first, and who's the canonical source of truth and that sort of thing. So. Sorry. Right. Yeah, I mentioned touch interactions earlier in the demo. In general, Ember is not that great at recognising touch events, but there are some really good libraries out there for helping you with that. Yeah, EmberJS is really cool. We built a little service that sort of centralizes it, and we can just inject that service into whatever part of the application needs to have swipe interactions, and that helps us kind of control exactly which parts of the page are swipeable and which are scrollable. Obviously there can be some issues if you're trying to do vertical swipes on the page in a touch device. Is that actually closing the page, or is it trying to scroll the content within the page? So you kind of have to be a bit careful about what parts respond to the swipe and which are responding to scroll. Yeah, so Matt will now give us a little bit of an overview of the toolchain we used during development.
So yeah, the general toolchain that we use Ember Cli to to actually develop the app locally in our browser. We use the Phonegap interface for testing locally on the simulator or on your own device. We use the Phonegap build web service to build the APK that we actually push out to users and push out to phones and stuff. And there's a test ferry service which is really useful for the actual pushing out to different groups and stuff. And obviously that Play Store that you eventually submit to. So yeah, the Ember environment is really the command line tools that it provides is really nice for web development. You can write in your ES6 and it compiles it to work on backwards, older browsers and stuff. You can include your packages from npm and Bower and all that. And yeah, you can just load it up in your browser like normal. So even though you're building a mobile app, you're just writing it in your browser with your normal Chrome tools or anything like that, and it just reloads as you're developing and stuff. So it's just an npm package, Ember Cli, and it bundles everything up, minifies it, creates your source maps and all that sort of stuff.
It's got Ember Cli itself has got really great support for generators. If people from the Rails world might be here. There's you can run Ember generate model and that sort of thing, and it just creates. It's a really good platform for creating a well-defined structure to your Ember app. Whereas previous to that, I think people had no real guidance on how to structure an Ember app nicely.
And then there's the Phonegap tools. The Phonegap itself is pretty much a wrapper over Cordova, and allows you to push up to the remote Phonegap build service. But these tools allow you to build the app locally and test it on this iOS simulator or the Android emulator on your computer. And you can also push it to a device. If you have the iPhone or Android plugged in, you can push it to your device. And then from that, you can use either Safari or Chrome to debug directly on the emulator or device. So you can have all your normal tools like you can inspect elements and change the CSS or debug your JavaScript on the fly in the emulator or on the device that's in your hand, sort of thing, which is really useful. It also provides you the projects that you can open in Xcode or Android Studio, so you can use all the normal Xcode debugging tools and profiling tools for your app. just by running Phonegap build, basically. There's also a lot of Cordova plugins available. So for all of the native functionality on the phones, you can just install a Cordova plugin for it from npm for your file storage, your geolocation, Google Analytics, any of those sorts of things that run on the phone. You can just pull in a package for, which is pretty good, really useful. The other useful thing is you have known targets. So on iOS and Android, you're kind of pretty much developing just for WebKit. So it's especially good for CSS. You know, you don't have to write for Internet Explorer. Is basically the thing. And then, yeah, using PhoneGap, you can push up to PhoneGap Build, which is an online service that will build your app and provide you the Android APK and the iOS and Windows. Though we weren't making a Windows app personally. So yeah, you do your Ember build into your www directory, and it just pushes that up and turns it into an app for you, basically. It's free if you only have one app, which is convenient.
Make lots of accounts.
Then it just provides you the package. And then we're using the TestVery web service, which you upload the package to, and you can send it out to different testers. So we had a couple groups, like the Media Suite group, just our internal testers, and then we also have like a client group where we can send them certain releases that we want them to test. And just send them a message saying these are the features that have been changed, and they'll send us more emails saying, oh, we want this person tested as well, and you can just add that email and send it to them. So it's quite a convenient service for just getting the app out there rapidly, sort of iterating. And then the best thing the TestVery gives you is it reports back with usage from those test users. So most useful for us was it gives us the console log output and like reports of responsiveness when it's going really slow and not responding. And it can let us track down like particular events or things that are loading that make the app really slow, or debug problems like that. For iOS, you have to install a Cordova plugin to get that information back. For Android, you don't have to install that, but Android also gives you quite a bit more information. I think more information than I've listed there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, so I mean, TestVery obviously gets around, you know, you don't have to push it to the store, obviously, and to get it out to people for demos and things like that.
For
a nice way to be able to push it out to a reduced set of users that you want to test it.
Yeah. For iPhone development, you still have to add all of the testers to the certificate before they can actually install it on their phone. Android's a bit simpler. You can just get their email and send it to them, and they can download it. But TestVery sort of combines all that together, so you can get all the people's phone IDs or whatever, and just add them to the certificate in one go. Yeah, it's quite nice for that. There were a number of things that we ran into in development, quite a few things that we learned, little gotchas. Just the state of Ember itself. So we were developing in Ember 1.1 or 1.13, which is very similar to Ember 2 and quite a bit different to earlier versions of Ember. And it's quite a state of flux. Finding information and plugins can be kind of difficult. If you're searching for online resources, a good trick is to use the Google search tools. Only give me results in the last year, because there's a lot of it's just been changing quite a bit over time. And yeah, there was quite a few components and packages that we wanted to use that were kind of out of date, like the Ember Sync and stuff like that. So you have to find one that works with the version of Ember that you're using at the moment. Another issue we ran into was there's a few pathing issues. Ember on build, it sort of copies all your assets and puts a hash on the end. So they don't necessarily end up in the same relative path than in your local environment. So things like our tiles, we created a tile server on the phone, essentially just the local tile server indexed by the ZXY of each tile.
Yeah.
And the way Ember build it sort of touches all your files and puts them all together and puts a hash on it, and unless you are including a file with a full path, it won't find
You won't know
it.
how to find it.
Yeah.
Find it basically.
Um,
It won't add the fingerprint onto the end of it. So
Yeah,
it won't know how to
so
find
there's a way of telling what things not to fingerprint, to just ignore and leave exactly how they are on the file system. So there's some things that we had to tell it to not fingerprint.
So any dynamic URLs that you're building for assets in the app, you'll have to add it to the exclude on fingerprints.
Yeah. Phonegap also doesn't like absolute paths, which can make things difficult, but you just have to work out how to get it to work. Phonegap expects everything to be relative to the www directory, your main sort of web root directory, because it's essentially serving up files from the phone's file storage, wherever your app ends up on the phone's file storage. So if you try and do absolute paths in PhoneGap, it kind of thinks it's relative to the phone's root file storage. So you pretty much have to use relative paths in your HTML within PhoneGap, which is a little bit of gotcha sometimes. You need to build Ember before you build PhoneGap. So you build Ember into your www directory, and then you build PhoneGap, because it just takes you just your www directory. So as long as you make sure you do a production build before you do it.
Yeah, we added
PhoneGap build.
an explicit hook so that every time you did
What to do
PhoneGap build, it would build the Ember app first, and that's
Yeah. Other things we ran into, PhoneGap is also a bit of a moving target. If you want to look at documentation for PhoneGap, it's been around for quite a while. You want to look at the very edge documentation, or at least whatever version you're using. Most of your Google results give you information from 3 years ago, from Cordova 3.0 or something, we're up to 5 point something. And the same problem with plugins, there's quite a lot of old ones and they're not all up to date. Cordova has their own hosting for plugins, but everything's moving towards NPM, so generally if it's on NPM, it should be a later version of the plugins that you're after. And installing plugins can be interesting. There's a lot of inconsistencies between the PhoneGap command line tools and the PhoneGap remote build. So we ran into a few issues there, where if you install something and save it to your config, it'll end up in a different format than the remote expects it to be in remote build. Yeah. There are some other things that differ, just like paths. For some things like icons, the local expects them to be relative to www, whereas when you push it up to remote build on build.phonegap, it expects everything to be in the www directory, so it's or the root directory, whichever way.
yeah.
Some things like that. We end up getting around that just with some more build hooks to copy icons to both locations, so it's just like in the right location no matter what sort of thing.
Let's do what you gotta do sometimes.
And then there are just some sort of like challenges around getting it to actually feel like a native app. If you just throw a web page into a native, or as an app, it just doesn't feel like a native app. So there were some challenges to get it to be smooth, but with a bit of work and some good design and the interactions, you can get it pretty close to being like a web app.
Cool. Yeah, so performance, obviously mobile apps, it can be a bit of an issue. This is probably one of our few forays into mobile app development, so we were learning a lot along the way, and we're pretty used to just browsers in a normal desktop machine or something, so you don't really consider the optimizations as much as what you really have to with mobile app development. So what we found, some areas that we managed to really work on was the geometries that we're pulling in from the ArcGIS service with Marlborough District Council were very, very well defined, so that some of them had thousands and thousands of points, you know, per bay geometry. So pulling all of that data in one massive JSON blob and trying to put it into a map was just ridiculous and caused massive slowdowns. So yeah, we used we've previously used a library called Simplify.js, which, you know, does some pretty wicked simplification of geometries. Found a PHP port of that, which was because we were using it on the server when we were importing data into Silverstripe. So yeah, so that worked really well to try and reduce the request sizes. Yeah, and I think I pointed out in the demo, if you pan around the map and a bay geometry happens to be in the center of the viewport, it'll highlight it. Yeah, obviously, if you you know, if you're trying to iterate through all of those geometries on the map and figure out whether the center of the viewport is actually inside one of them, it could be a reasonably expensive operation. So we found an indexing plugin which uses an R-tree data structure under the hood. That basically, just as you're adding those bay geometries, it sticks it into a specific data structure, and you can search based on a very small geometry in the center of the screen, and it'll you know, within can't remember the
Much smaller amount of time.
a much smaller amount of time, yeah, and effort. Yeah, it pulls the right bay out for you, so that really helped things quite a bit. Yeah, Ember models are fantastic if you need, you know, things like the relationships between the models and all that sort of stuff, and observers. But obviously, every single one of them comes with a certain amount of overhead of creating it. All of the underlying stuff that each model extends, the observers, all that sort of stuff can add up to a bit of a performance problem if you've got very large data sets. One of the things that we decided to move away from Ember models for was the tide data.
Yeah, the tide data for each year, there's like 60,000 records at least. And just the overhead of creating an Ember model for every single one of those just takes a bunch of time and a bunch of memory, and yeah, I realized didn't really need it.
Yeah,
some things.
we didn't really need, you know, any of the observers and relationships between them and things like that. So yeah, we just went to a straight Ajax call and you know,
Just plain JavaScript.
just plain JavaScript objects and that sort of thing, just to try and reduce a little bit of the performance overhead there. So that's something to definitely think about when you, I imagine, using almost any JavaScript framework. If you don't need what the framework's providing you with models, then don't use them. Yeah, so yeah, and obviously images are a massive problem, especially with a CMS. You know, the people administering the CMS may not really understand what they need to do, so you need to try and figure out a way to manage that. So yeah, cropping, resizing, compressing. We found a really cool little plugin for Silverstripe that you can specify a focus area on the image that you upload, and it'll crop around that focus area. So yeah, that's quite a nice idea if the thing that you really want to be in the image on the screen is not right in the center of the image or something like that. Yeah, and I guess you know, we really need to balance the amount of data bundled with the app versus the data that we're downloading in this sort of within this offline situation, and so that's been something that we've been kind of working on to some degree. Yeah. initially with the map, we sort of thought, oh, we'll just get one big image and we'll stick it in the map, and you know, you'll be able to pan around and that'll be fine. There won't be any kind of requests and all that sort of stuff. We thought that would be more performant, but turns out that was a really bad idea, because you're basically sticking one massive image into the map, right? And trying to keep that in memory.
At least with Leaflet, it seems the tile layers are much more optimized than just one big image layer, and if it has to scale that image and stuff, it becomes quite unperformant on a phone.
Yeah. Yeah, so we created some tile layers from multiple static images. So for the Marlborough Sounds area, there's actually kind of two nautical maps at least for the Tasman area, and one for kind of the Marlborough Sounds area. So we stitched them together into one piece, cut them up, did optimizations on the resulting PNGs, tried to really, you know, pull things down to as small as possible, reducing the color space on the PNGs and all that sort of stuff. Just it's actually quite amazing how much of a gain you can get using programs like Image Optim and that sort of thing to just run through them all. And then so something that we found in order to kind of support having tiles, because we thought we were just going to have one image on the device and we'd throw it into the map and it would be all fine. But obviously, if you've got tiles that in an offline context, you need to be able to serve them up somewhere. So as crazy as it sounds, it actually was pretty much just as simple as storing them in the path that the map expects to request from when you so there's the Z index of the map and the X and Y coordinates of that specific tile, and that's just what it requests from the server when you're doing an online fetch. But basically just stored them in the file system in a known zxy.png format, and
It's considerably performant.
yeah, it's really fast. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So there's lots of like little things that we kind of touched along the way that we never seen before, and had a bit of fun trying to figure it out.
There's definitely the balance between when we did go to tile servers, how many levels zoom in you can go, because
Absolutely,
each level that you zoom in, the number of tiles, the number of images becomes exponentially larger.
yeah.
So
So you can't, you know,
You'd be able
store the very lowest levels in the on the device, because you'd be storing, you know, gigabytes of data. So yeah, there's a real. So luckily, Leaflet provides some pretty cool optimizations there as well. You can define what the maximum zoom level is for that particular layer, and then from then on it'll stretch the individual tiles that it knows about. So yeah, that can help a lot. Obviously, you don't want to stretch them too much; they get a bit ugly. But there's some nice optimizations that you can manage, even going down 2 levels from the level that it's supposed to be rendered at. Doesn't look too bad sometimes.
So are you transitioning between local and external tile servers based on Zoom, or is it just if you've chosen that map, it's always going to be local?
just if you've chosen that map.
Right.
Yeah.
So the initial ones that it comes with, the initial one comes with the nautical charts, and that's downloaded.
Right.
And then these ones are online only, and then you can download other offline ones or more detailed offline ones.
Sure.
So it's only ever shown in online.
Would it be
or offline.
viable to transition between local and remote?
Yeah, they'll
All the
sure.
way down the
They'll be
stack?
doable. Yep.
Yeah, I guess you just have different tile layers, right, that you request them from.
Yeah, I think you'd have to do a little bit of checking to see if you are online, because if you aren't online, it will show up probably
Yeah,
images, or you
Yeah, yeah.
handle those situations. But
Yep. Cool. Whoop. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so the good parts. That's what we like to finish on. Yeah, all in all, the client is stoked with what we've produced, which is a pretty nice position to be in. You know, we did it on budget, within the time that we said we were going to do it in. And we've produced something that wasn't what they originally wanted, but what they want now, which is a fantastic part of the agile kind of development methodology, I think. And we really kind of pushed ourselves into some areas that we've never dealt with. I think it's been a really valuable experience for both Matt and I. Cool. There's a few points there, I guess. I mean, one of the things that we really did kind of put a bit of work into was trying to efficiently display large data sets on a map. And we do quite a lot of mapping applications, and Leaflet is our friend. We know it reasonably well, but because we're generally working in desktop browsers, you don't really get into that issues of performance. So it was really interesting to kind of get into that and perhaps bring some of that to the browser world as well, the desktop browser world, to try and make things a bit more snappy. Yeah. All right, that was us. Anyone got any questions?
Have you used any notifications? Example?
Notifications?
Like push notification.
Push notifications, yes.
No, we haven't.
There is something on the backlog for it.
This
Most
is
of our clients invest more money.
phase 2. Yeah.
Did you look at anything else before Ember? Like React or anything like that?
No. We had just kind of invested a fair bit of internal development effort on kind of getting heads around Ember. So it wasn't absolutely the default, but we were kind of wanting to continue with that. I really don't think that
Too much difference.
Any particular framework, JavaScript framework, would have been better or worse than the other in this particular instance. But probably our experience and the one that we knew was the thing that that made it better. We probably would have taken 20 times longer if we tried to move into React and do it in there instead of 20 times. But there's always the learning overhead, right?
I feel like the component nature of Ember was quite good for all the different layers that come on and off. Like we've got the base map route that is always active, and then we have these components that sort of come in and out. And that worked quite well. I felt like the development of that was reasonably fun.
Yeah. They each of those sort of have their own life cycle as they come in. When they go off the page, they get garbage collected and that sort of thing. So it's pretty useful. Cool. Well, that was good timing.
So do you think you'll release any of those components you developed for Ember as open source projects for other people to use, like your custom Ember store and there was a second one in there?
The custom Ember store could.
Possibly, it's a combination of Cordova and Ember.
So it's quite specific.
Requires the Cordova file API in your browser, as well as it's an extension of an Ember store.
So it's almost kind of inextricable without a lot of work, or
you could pull it out. I think.
You could pull it out.
Yeah. You could probably create some kind of interface that meant that you could chunk in local storage instead or something like that if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's often just useful to see a worked solution, right? 'Cause someone's going to go down the Ember sync path, doing exactly the same thing you've just done.
Yeah,
and you'll save them a lot of time, right?
It's a bit of pain.
What about the EmberJS?
Yeah, the EmberJS service.
Yeah.
That's the one.
I mean, it's a pretty small piece, but that's kind of part of the JavaScript and Ember methodology, or Node especially, I guess, to have nice small tested pieces.
Yeah.
Not that I would say everyone was tested, but we could write tests for it.
What is the difference between Cordova and Phonegap?
He was just looking this up earlier.
I was trying to find the answer to that. PhoneGap, yeah, it's kind of just a wrapper. PhoneGap allows you to push to the remote build the PhoneGap build service. I think it has.
The trademark.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not Cordova.
Right, yeah, because Apache been over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. It's
It's basically Adobe's branded.
essentially, yeah.
Because I think Adobe built it originally, right? Is that how that worked? Or, and then they
Oh,
they
I
open
think so.
sourced it, right?
I thought it was the other way around.
Was
They-
it the other way
I
around?
thought they
They bought it.
essentially bought it.
It's only had the name PhoneGap initially, right? Anyway, and then it became Cordova.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a small company, I can't remember the name of it.
Brian LaRue, I think, wasn't it? Brian LaRue, I think his name?
Yeah, Brian
yeah,
LaRue.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
He started it.
Yeah.
I think Adobe kind of bought into it and kind of made it a bit more sustainable
Yeah.
and credible.
Do they run the build aspect of it? Adobe still run that?
Yes, they
part?
do, yeah,
Right, so
yeah.
that's probably where they're making the coin.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, yeah. It's
Sign up for a second account.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't officially advocate
Is that a
though,
service
right?
you offer?
I'm sure you can figure out how to do it, Jonathan. Yeah.
With your map tiles,
Mm-hmm.
is you guys went with S3 map tiles because your client already provides that, or is it by your choice?
No, we're using Lynn's.
Right, okay.
Lynn's map tile. So
Did you guys look at any other map tile option?
We actually set up
you
our
looked
own,
at
we set up our own tile servers both online and offline.
yeah.
But in order to get them, we actually scraped the Linux tile servers.
Right.
Well, yeah. we pulled the images from the Lynn's dataset, which is free to
Yeah,
grab.
the aerial ones we scraped.
Right. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
And the top ones we scraped them, but for the normal ones we had to chop those ourselves.
What are you using for your tile server?
Just the CDN. So once we kind of
Oh, okay.
figured out the
This is
pathing
some
structure, we're
URL,
just
not-
using
There's no
that.
software. It's
Okay,
purely
it's not using
Just
user
URLs on the
URLs.
CDN. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a Python tile server or something?
It's really simple.
It's folders and images though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It basically is. I mean, it's not.
So you
It's
pulled
nothing
the
fancy.
entire map tiles.
Sorry.
So you pulled entire, like for Marlborough Sounds, you guys have pulled down the tiles for that and put
Put
it
them
in
on
your
our own
CDN.
CDN.
Okay.
And you have some analytics on that, so over time you'll see like whether you possibly change the cut of your tiles rather than so if one bay's taking up 4 tiles when it could have been just 2.
I guess that it probably would only happen at different zoom levels. I guess to be able to. Oh, I see you meaning to cut it up in a slightly different way. I think you basically have to do it based on the lat long. You know, there's a standard for where those coordinates have to be for the cutting them up. You know, so
Yeah, you could, depending if you cut it down the middle, you've got to load 4 tiles.
yeah,
If you cut it on the side,
Leaflet follows a standard for a certain lat long is a certain tile or is a certain place at a certain time. So the corner of each tile has to match a certain lat long. And
You could do it with Microsoft and paper.
yeah.
And if it's serving off the local file system, loading 4 images from flash memory is
Instead of
it's not very much.
Yeah.
So when you were scraping the data and then having to match that up to what Leaflet is expecting for that long, was that?
It's in a kind of a
It's in the
standard
same-
format.
It's in the same
Fine.
format.
Yeah,
So
They were both in the same format?
yeah.
So you're not dealing with double density images and stuff?
No, not for the map.
Regular images.
Well, yeah, I mean, just you could have your ZXY, but some devices could handle double the pixels
Right.
for any given tile.
So, I mean, Leaflet does some kind of magical retina stuff for, for the icons. For when you click on something, it shows obviously a smaller one if it's retina and that sort of thing.
We're trying to send file size, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
download tons of stuff and run it up.
Yeah.
So with the slightly fuzzier images, you can get retina. It's the
just curious. Well, for certain maps, you know, for the topo stuff, that might make more, or for aerial stuff, it might.
And certainly if we're using the online service, that would make sense, but for offline ones, it's all about file size.
Sure.
Yeah.
How big's the app with the tiles that you've got?
20 meg, 22 meg.
Oh, that's not too bad.
That's really good.
Yeah.
What's the bundle for just the maps, the tiles?
Sorry.
10 megs for the tiles?
No, most of it's like nearly 20 meg of the tiles.
Okay.
Oh, heck, that's
Yeah,
nice.
but the others is only
Yeah,
a couple of meg.
My kid just downloaded, was it Lego, the Star Wars Lego app game. It's like a, oh wow, what is this? It's like a 100 meg or something.
Cool. Okay.
Any other questions?
Just, you did 9 one-way sprints. Were they back to back?
We sort of had a bit of a closing out period of just a bit of tidying up and that sort of thing. But I think we've kind of chosen to do that outside of the scope of the budget. Just
We also built a website straight off that link sprint and then to the next to build a website version of it. So what they would show is actually the entire website.
yeah, a really, really pretty website. Would you like to see?
Shows up.
Quite a lot of existing apps.
And this is actually kind of one of the cool things about the website is we're using HTML5 apps as you want a website too. Well, it took
2 weeks to do the website?
Yeah, probably.
and half of it was just design, like pretty stuff. Took on maps.
So these are the same images.
Same images, same
Yeah.
CMS. So
Yeah,
actually,
cool.
it's a Silverstripe website, and
Yeah.
we use Silverstripe for the back end of the app.
Nice.
So,
Cool.
yeah, so we just modified CSS.
Did you do it, Julia?
I've built the HTML CSS, but maybe it's also distracting.
Oh yeah, that's just the
Yeah.
projected, right?
So manual responsive, and obviously there's touch controls on here, so you modify all that stuff. Yes, it's kind of one of the party pieces of doing HTML5.
Yeah,
Mobile apps,
totally.
works on the web too.
Yeah, so instead of doing a mobile capable website as they wanted in the first place, we've kind of gone the other way. And
The original brief was they wanted a website, a mobile friendly website.
Mm, mm.
You want to make that.
So that's the same as in the mobile app.
It's the same kind of base.
That's very cool.
So what's the difference between running this through the mobile browser? Apart from obviously
We can take that.
offline
So,
stuff.
nothing
It's like touch gestures, but
yeah,
no, have you got touch gestures working for the web? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really swipe stuff on the web because we don't have any of the same base stuff. It will work. Yeah.
So if you click on the more there, in the app it swipes up and you can see it. We've actually built a separate page for this because it's never been SEO report. So anyway, we'll run the app there. So we rejig it. Yeah.
yeah. So Matt works in magic with Silverstripe, kind of creating routes to these, just basically data objects that we're creating for each of the bays and stuff like that. So they're not really actual pages; they're kind of just like grabbing data and serving them up and stuff like that. Pretty cool.
Cool. Thank you guys. Bunch of pieces have just arrived, so if you want to take
Cool.
them, just sit
I also just want to check in. So next month we have a node school and Xmas drinks coming up. So it's the 4th Thursday of the month. We'll be running all sorts of things. So whether you're a beginner or whether you're an expert, come in. We'll have tons of stuff for you to do. Probably looking at bringing some functional stuff in. And there's been a bit of a hole in the node school kind of with the advanced functional programming. We really like to bring some of the knowledge we have through some of the other projects and put you through a node school on that. So if that sounds exciting to you, if you want to see how we use Ramda in production, and like see how we use functional programming day to day, there's going to be some really cool stuff to show you there. Or if you just want to learn some Node, come down. Here you go. Enjoy the pizza.
Drunken Node School. I mean,
Drunken Node School.
It's true.
It's true.
There's a couple of vegetarians who will have to keep it around.
I don't think take that off the table.
Oh shit, that's the end of the video.
That is the end of the video. It didn't.